Good afternoon, business students. So I was reading an article today from the BBC about cheaper weddings in the week. It's commonly known that obviously when you're very busy, so the weekend, getting married on the Saturday, that there might be excess demand. We know the basic rules of supply and demand. This puts it into context. So it's a great way of quickly revising PED. And one of those common things in exam papers, even if it's not directly assessed, you can use this theory along with YED, product life cycle, Boston matrix, bit of Ansoff, those sorts of things with seasonality wrapped into this as well. Look at this lovely couple with their open top Land Rover, for example. They wouldn't be doing that in the middle of February in the rain. So actually seasonality will come into this as well. I've put a quick shout out to the photographers. I've stolen this up really from BBC's website, but they look like they're a medium-sized business, and it's only fair if that's their photo that you should go and look at the website. It's quite a nice website. So let's go through the spec quickly so we can actually think about the theory, and then we'll go on to the case study. So we need to be able to calculate these things, which is a bit obvious. We also need to be able to give a good definition. Very good, very important at the start of your essays. We've got a 10 marker coming up in a bit, that you basically define properly. This will tell you what to look for, and there are other parts of this theory that would get into a definition, maybe inelastic, unitary, stuff like that. So here is the maths side of it. Personally, I would only be doing that in my essays and also my calculations. If you want to write it longhand, you're most welcome. You'll get the same marks, but you must listen. You must write your formulas down. Only last week, I marked a calculation question that someone got 0 marks out of 4. They sort of did something with the numbers. They didn't bother writing down the formula because they thought, I quote, it was easy. It is if you write the formula, then you write a blank formula and you superimpose the numbers. It's very easy. So, for example, here we've got a 30% increase in bookings. We've got a price lower. So if it was me, I would write a minus next to that. I'd like a plus next to this because there's going to be this relationship between the numbers with PED, and then we can very quickly work out that the PED coefficient, which is the posh word for this number, is -2. Always put a minus in front of PED. Remember, if this is YED, very important, because that minus really means something. Yeah, especially if you're popping out to Aldi's this afternoon. So part B of this unit is obviously interpretation, and we're thinking about how responsive customers might be to changes in price. I don't want to lower my price for the sake of it. I want to lower my price to increase demand, or I want to put my price up because I've got too much demand and I can't cope with it, or I put my price up a little bit, demand drops a little bit, but I'm still making the same profit as I was before, therefore not paying for the unit price of whatever I'm not selling anymore. So you can analyze this in many different ways. But we need to know about our elastic demand. So if it is greater than 1, so this is greater than 1. I know it's got minus next to it, but it's greater than 1, okay? And it says there, indicating that a price change leads to a proportionately larger change in quantity demand. So for every 1% change in price, if it was with this PED coefficient, there would be a 2% change in demand. Easy peasy. 1% change in price minus 2 over here means 2% change in demand. Now remember, when you're doing your formulas here, demand always goes on top. Always demand go on top. Here's an example with our case study, which we'll come to in a second, to do with this number. Now actually, weekday weddings will have a different PED coefficient than weekend. If I was to put my prices up more at the weekend, well, people want to get married at the weekend. Maybe they're more tolerant to price increases. If I wasn't full up at the weekend and I lowered my prices, it really depends on the competitors, and it also depends on my venue. If my venue is just a bit grotty and miserable, do I really want to get married there? Well, maybe not. You know, you don't normally go for the cheapest of everything on your wedding. You might be working within a budget, but you're not going to want cheap. Yeah. Inelastic, as it says, under 1. And we can see that every 1%, so if the PED coefficient was 0.5 and this was 1% change in price, we would have a 0.5% change in demand. Okay, so we could sort of work out that difference. And here you go, here's an example to do with our weddings. Unitary elasticity of demand. Don't think you're going to get a calculate question on this, but if I remember correctly, I think it's an Edexcel paper, we've had a 4-marker, explain something to do with unitary. And for every 1% change in price, there will be a 1% change in demand. Okay? So for every 2% change in price, there'll be a 2% change in demand. It's quite easy to understand unitary. So moving through the theory here, we need to think about those factors that can influence PED, and there are a lot. So we've got threat of substitutes. Well, it depends. Are we mass market? Are we niche market? Is this hotel venue just the best for 50 miles? Has it got a Michelin star restaurant? Is it historic significance? All of those sorts of things might be very, very important. Is it the necessity or luxury? That will obviously have an impact on it. And also you think about this as a proportion of people's income. So if the price went up, for example, for, I don't know, Northampton Saints season tickets, well, some people might class that as a necessity, so they will make sure they've got the money so they can go and watch the rugby. Some people might just think, well, it's gone up by 20%, but I've got £1 billion in the bank, I don't really care. So you have to think about who your target market are. So if we're targeting budget conscious people that want to get married, actually they may have to save up for years to get married. Okay, and in the original article from BBC that I did chop back, there was a story about how someone got married in the week, and with the money that they perceived they saved, because they were comparing it to the weekend, they went out and rented a luxury Rolls Royce. Okay, so just by changing the day, they could get extra. It wasn't so much about not spending the money, it was actually, by the sounds of it, so they could get extra for their wedding. And I'm sure they had a lovely day. Also, we've got to think about time period. And for weddings, I think we've got this with the weekday versus weekends, and we've also got seasonality. It won't surprise you, more people get married in the summer. Okay? So, significance, we need to think about how crucial this is, and this is all about pricing strategies. Okay, there's no point in you not understanding your PED coefficient and you suddenly change the price and it has the opposite reaction that you hoped. You've also got to go very, very careful with changing prices, and this is something that students tend to miss a lot. If I change my price, am I repositioning my company? Yeah. So we talk about French Connection UK, the luxury fashion brand that obviously bought out the very nasty cheap t-shirts with something that looked like a swear word on the front of it. They sold a lot of cheap t-shirts and then didn't sell as much of their high fashion stuff. So whoever came out with that brilliant idea, I'm hoping they got fired because they repositioned the entire brand. Now, fighting to get back from that position is very, very difficult, and that's why luxury brands tend to have different brands for different market segments, even though sometimes they're very similar. Hugo Boss Orange, for example. So they're slightly different though. So pricing strategy, as I mentioned, and in the case study, there's something that's described discriminatory pricing. Now that's not actually taught. in the A-level for Edexcel, which surprises me a little bit. So for instance, as a student, you are entitled to student discount. I've still got an NUS card. I pay my 20 quid a year or whatever it is and get discounted at the cinemas. That is discriminatory pricing. It's not the type of discrimination that's illegal. It's people, I don't know, I'm near retirement age, for example. So once I've retired, maybe I'll get cheaper bus tickets or something. I can afford a car. I'll be all right. So think about this. This is discriminatory pricing, but aimed at certain days. Okay. Revenue management. Well, clearly this company wants to fill their hotels. You don't make any money from empty rooms in the middle of the week. So if you're going to charge over 20 grand for a day for a wedding, and that the only day you do that on is on a Saturday, well, what about all the wages? What about the empty rooms for those extra 5 or 6 days in the week? Well, lower your price in the week and hopefully you can get 2 or 3 weddings in the week and still charge 20 odd grand at a weekend. As long as people suddenly don't think that you're cheap. If they suddenly think, well, that venue's only 8.5 grand, I don't really want to go with them, then some people get snobbish. They want that special experience. It might be a reason not to choose the venue because that type of person comes in the week. And that's not me saying about that type of person, because I would choose a weekday, by the way. We need to be able to obviously interpret the calculation. We need to think about that. And if it's elastic, what could we do? If it's inelastic, what could we do? And we won't talk about unitary, even though you should really know. If that number's very close to 1, you should be talking about it. If it's not exactly 1, then you can still talk about it nearly being unitary. And actually, this would be the impact. Lovely chain of argument by describing the PED coefficient with elastic or inelastic or unitary, and then talking about percentage changes in price. Okay, all examiners love people that manipulate numbers and draw conclusions from them. So if you see numbers, do a calculation. With that in mind, let's practice a calculation. So remember, the first step to any of these is you put the formula down. I've written it in the really long way here for you. But remember, percentage triangle D over percentage change P. Yeah, so you can do this in 2 seconds. There's no excuse for you not to write this. And then you write a blank one. Now we know we need to find the PED coefficient, so I've put a question mark in there. I would just leave it blank normally. And then I would write, there's always a giveaway in the question or the case study, and then they make you work for something. So I'm going to be looking for the giveaway. Well, in the question, I've got a giveaway here, a 30% increase in bookings. Well, that's not going to be price, is it? So it's going to be demand. So I'm going to shove that on top of there. Now, you don't need to put a plus next to the 30%. I do that because in the case study, I am looking for a decrease in price somewhere. I now know what I'm looking for. I'm probably not going to read the entire case study. But you might want to pause and read the case study. Top tip, heads up, there's a 10 marker coming as well. Here's the case study. I will pause. You can pause the video longer than I pause. Go and find the numbers. I wonder where they are. Okay, pretty easy. Stick the numbers in, do a calculation. We need to find the percentage change in price. We can see there's a 59.4% one there. And then we can work out the PED. Now, the golden rule in business A-level is 2 decimal places, unless the question stipulates differently. If you were to put down minus 0.505, it's still correct. You're still going to get 4 marks. If you rounded it to 5.1, it's still correct. You're going to get full marks. If the question says to 3 decimal places and you round it to 1, you're going to lose a mark. Okay, make sure you read the question. So we've got that. Easy maths, very easy. Let's move on. Oh, you wouldn't write this, by the way, but as a point, we would know that this is inelastic. Okay, so just because I'm lowering my prices in the week to 8.5 grand, it doesn't mean I'm going to suddenly get as much demand as I get at the weekends. Okay, unless they read the BBC article, which is a great bit of PR for one of the hotels in Buckinghamshire. So here we are with a however already in there. I won't bother redoing the video for you. Using your knowledge of PED. Okay, so we've got a nice little bit of knowledge in there, and we need to make sure we're demonstrating our knowledge. Okay, this is either the language of PED, talking about elastic, inelastic, or possibly I could throw in a calculation if one was available, if only we had done a calculation earlier. Assess the likely reasons. This is obviously the start of our hook. Why wedding venues might offer significantly lower prices for weekend weddings compared to weekday weddings. So reasons why. Okay, we want to know why. Now, we've not been given a business objective. Okay, so we need to find one from the case study, because quite a lot of the time they say to increase revenue, to increase profits or stuff like that. And yes, you could put that in there as long as you quantify it with the case study evidence. But I think realistically, knowing hotels are empty in the week, we could try and bring in a little bit of capacity utilization from theme 2. Gosh, that would confuse the paper 1 examiners. No, it wouldn't actually. So why not revise all 4 themes for paper 1, hey? Anyway, so we're always going to start off with a good definition. Okay, I'm not going to read it to you, you can read. And then we're going to go to the case study, and we'll just pretend that we can't see this however down the bottom. So we've got the case study. You've already read it, by the way. You have already worked out the PED coefficient. So I've got this little gem in the bank. This is where I remind my students, do the questions in the order of the bloody paper. Okay, don't go and listen to, I don't know, anyone on the internet that says, do your 20 markers first. All you're doing is admitting that you're not very good with time. Sort your timing out. It takes 5 minutes to do a 4 marker, 12 for a 10, 15 for a 12, 24 for a 20. Find yourself some time points where you can double check you're on time, and if you're getting behind, then speed up. And the best exam technique that you can develop is knowing when you need to move on and not being that weak student that says just 2 more minutes. Yeah, you will be tempted to over answer the 10 markers because they're easy, or the 8 markers in paper 3, and the second 12 marker is the most commonly blank page in the exam paper because it's difficult, and that's normally where weak students work out that they've run out of time, so they skip to the 20 marker. If you do the questions in order, there's a reasonable likelihood, looking at previous exam papers for the last couple of years, that you will be able to use the knowledge from your easier, earlier questions, maybe in some of the later, more difficult ones. This is a great example where you've already done a calculation. If we can squeeze that into our chain of argument somewhere, the examiner will love you. And they'll send you a special message. It's your results on results day. One reason for offering lower prices for weekend weddings is to attract more bookings and increase venue capacity utilization. Told you I'd get theme 2 in there. Venues face lower demand weekdays compared to weekends. By offering discounts for weekday events, venues can encourage more couples to book, spreading demand evenly across the week. This helps venues avoid empty hotels instead of just empty. Nice bit of context actually, and maintain a steady income flow. Hence, a house in Buckingham offers reduced weekday rates from 21 grand to 8.5, which attracted 30% more bookings. I know that because I did the question just now, which is a PED of minus, rounded this one. So for every 1% change in price, demand will increase by 0.51%. If that doesn't demonstrate your understanding of PED, I don't know what does. Okay? It wouldn't have taken that long to write. PED is one of those simple things that we can all do, but actually we take for granted sometimes, so we don't explain it in the way that we have there. We'll have a whole however there. It's a 10 marker. I don't need P however for something like a likely reasons question, but it's probably a little bit longer than 3 chains of argument. Got to be excited over PED. However, offering lower prices on weekdays could undermine the perceived value of the venue. Regularly offering weekday discounts might lead to a perception that the venue is less prestigious or desirable. This can negatively impact the brand's image and allow competitors to capitalise on the perceived higher value of their priced offerings. So we're more expensive because we're better. Wedding planner Holly Poulter, from the case study, hints at this balance, stating these kinds of decisions will always be tricky balance between budget and obligations. The obligation is it's your wedding, yeah, and maybe you want the best. You might think it's the price that makes it the best. Overall, lowering prices for weekday weddings is a strategic move to improve venue utilisation and cater for budget-conscious customers, couples even, because customers would be abstract. Then we need to justify this. Now, I didn't really want to say, without offering these, they might not be full. I could have got away with that, but I thought we'd get something else in there, mainly so my wife will talk to me. However, balancing competitive pricing with maintaining a premium image is crucial for sustaining long-term business success. Getting married is one of the happiest days of your life, so a couple might not want the cheapest venue. Okay, there you go. Hopefully that's okay. You saw it coming. 2 different 10 markers. This was one of the easier ones because it wasn't assessed the likely benefits, and those ones are obviously evil over here. Is it level 4? It's got a calculation in a 10 marker that doesn't ask me for a calculation. There's chains of argument. There's loads and loads of context. It compares and contrasts. It talks about behaviour. I think it's a supported judgment. It's got to be 9 or 10. If you disagree, shove something in the comments, but you tell me why using the words from the marking grid. Okay? Use the marking grid to give me your arguments. Or just give me a thumbs up. Hopefully that was useful. Have a good day.